on. We need to continue. We need to hit on continue so that the recording can commence. Okay. So once again, a very warm welcome. I'm Swaran. I'm one of the members of this wonderful diverse community we have here that we call POLTN, the Pacific Online Learning and Teaching Network, which is a community of practitioners across the Pacific who are committed to supporting the online learning community. So the online learning community includes those who are involved in supporting or teaching technology-enhanced learning environments, or are thinking about developing new courses or programs using learning technologies. The network will meet via Zoom once a month, and we arrange for events, resources, professional development opportunities. And if you are part of our mailing list, if you're part of our Facebook group, then you will get regular updates about the events, if there's any projects that we are working on, or we have, there's lots of opportunities to do some collaborative work together. So the network was convened by Dr. Jalal Mohammed, who is also the speaker for today's session. And he is a lecturer at AUT. And Dr. Jalal was another something for us to be very proud of is Dr. Jalal is from Fiji, and he used to work for Fiji National University as well. Okay, so he is currently a senior lecturer and program leader for the health management program at the Auckland University of Technology. He has held several academic positions at the Fiji School of Medicine and subsequently the Fiji National University, where he was one of the first academics to deliver online courses. Dr. Mohammed is passionate about improving engagement and student experience in technology-enhanced learning environments. He has been recognized for exemplary teaching practices in the online environment. And to be honest, my personal experience with Dr. Jalal, he was one of the very first people in the South Pacific Islands who knew what I was talking about when I said something in line of medical informatics or health informatics, right? So he has really done a lot of work both in Fiji and in New Zealand. And I think this is something wonderful he has started off. It's a way of giving back to your own country and to the Pacific at large. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Jalal Mohammed. Over to you.
Thank you, Swaran. Thank you for those kind words, and thank you for introducing me. So welcome, everyone. Just share my screen and just let me know that you can see it. Can you see my screen?
Not at the moment. Yes, we can see the light.
All right, okay, so welcome. So I did this presentation very early on when we formed this network, and since then our membership has grown, and I've been requested to re-deliver this, but I've also gone back to this session and taken on board some of the feedback, some of the conversations that I've been having with you guys, with people here as well, and refining that template that I came up with for designing an engaging online learning environment. So I'm going to represent this with all of those improvements taken on board. So traditionally, when we think of teaching and learning online, what we've traditionally been doing is we've been using a learning management system, and largely we've been using it as a repository of information. So we put in information and then students pull it out and try and make sense of that information. But online learning is a lot more than that. It is supposed to be an engaging environment where students get together. So there's active learning that could be happening there. There's learning as, a social activity, and that knowledge construction or knowledge creation should be linked to all of those elements that you have in that online space. So when I thought about online learning through my own practice, there were certain things that were, that I saw that people were doing, that I was doing, and I started to think about what were some of the good practices around designing an online learning environment that would be engaging for the learners. So one of the things that I saw early on was that if you have too many clicks, students get lost. They don't know where they are, what they're supposed to be looking for. So minimize the clicks. And the other thing that I kind of encountered in my practice was that there used to be, you know, or when you treat it as a repository, you have folders, you have lots of folders. You know, you'll have a folder for lectures, a folder for tutorials, a folder for assessments. And then students have to navigate through these different folders and try and pull out the information in order to make sense of what they need to do for that week. The other thing that I came across engaging with my learners is that people like visual elements in an online learning environment. It draws them to it and engages them. And the other thing is have a consistent format, you know, to ensure that learners are able to find the knowledge or the information that they need to create knowledge. And also, when you're teaching face-to-face and when you're teaching in an online environment, your role is different as an academic. You transition in an online environment to being more of a facilitator and guide rather than, you know, a traditional lecturer, you know, standing in front of a classroom. So those were some of the key principles or key things that I considered when I came up with a design for a template. And I'll share with you this template. But some of the other things that I went back and had a look at was the teaching pedagogy. So one of the things that I wanted to build into this template was a scaffolded approach to learning. So each of the elements in that design that they encountered will build knowledge for the learner. So as they engage with more of these elements, they have a better picture of that learning for that week. I also wanted to ensure that there was constructive alignment. So if you had these resources, you had activities, you had teamwork, etc., they all aligned to the learning goals or the learning outcomes of the course. And also, you know, because I'm social, and I know a lot of people in the Pacific are social, the culture is social as well. So you make sense, you know, what I wanted to embed into this template was that knowledge is a social process, that learning is a social process where you create knowledge by engaging not just with the resources and textbooks and readings, but with each other. So you get to contextualize knowledge within the systems that you work, the cultures that you have, etc. So those were some of the key pedagogical principles that I built into this template. So I've just have a link there, and it's a wonderful link about the different pedagogies and learning theories. In case you wanted to read a little bit more about this and shape your own learning style or shape your own teaching style as well, you can have a look at that. So I'll come to that template. So as I said, the basis for that template, you know, this was my pedagogical framework for the template. The first was that scaffolding of learning, then it was constructive alignment and constructivism, but there were some key learning principles as well. So what I wanted to embed in that template was that people learn to learn as they learn, and that learning is contextual, and that learning is personal. So it focused around the learning styles of learners, how they learn, how they contextualize, how they view knowledge, you know, the particular lens that they bring in as, you know, someone, you know, from the Pacific, someone from elsewhere, you know, so you have, you know, Pacifica lenses, you have Eurocentric lenses, all of these different types of lenses that help the learner shape and create that knowledge. Also, you know, as I said earlier, I wanted to ensure that learning is a social activity and that learning is an active process. So as the learners engage with all of these elements, they're actively learning, and all of those tasks, teamworks also have an active element to it. And then, as I said earlier, that the teacher's role is a facilitator or a guide in that online learning environment, and that the guide or the facilitator motivates the learners to engage with all of those elements. So I'll come to that element. So this is actually in the form of a document. So what it does is it just means that you can, you know, if you're looking at this, this is the guide to that document. You can start filling this out for your course that you want to put into an online learning environment. And it helps you to also translate that quickly into any learning management system. So the first element is a banner, and a banner just introduces the week. Basically, there are some key elements to a banner. You know, this is week 1, this is the dates to the week, and it has a little short blurb around what to do next. So presenting the banner visually, as I said, you know, a lot of these elements are visual, and that's because of the feedback that I got from learners around moving beyond just having recorded resources that, you know, they hear voices, but also having different types to accommodate the different learning styles. So one of them is visual. So you can go back to those learning styles, the VARKS, VARK. So that first element is just that first thing that they see when they enter that week, and it keeps it fresh, and it keeps the learner motivated, and promotes engagement with the course. So from the, before I go into the next section, so I'm also going to present some tools that you can use to create some of these elements. By no means am I advocating for any of these tools. These were just tools that I've come across. You may have some different tools that you could use as well, but I'm also presenting some free tools that are out there, so they don't, they're not resource intensive. You know, I understand in some specific contexts, you may have access to some tools, but in other specific contexts, you may not as well. So there's a lot of different word art tools. I just use word clouds to create that. You can also use Prezi or Canva. Canva is quite good as well. There is a free version. If you're in primary school, if you're a primary school teacher or a secondary school teacher, there is, you can get the paid version for free as well. Unfortunately, they don't extend that courtesy to tertiary educators. You do have to pay for it, but the free version offers quite a bit as well. So the next element to the template is an introduction to the week. And this is where you as the facilitator outline for the learner, you know, what are some of the key things that they need to cover in this week. It also helps you to connect to the learner. I like to use a video for this, or a voiceover presentation, just so the learner could hear me or they could see me, and it helps to develop those connections. So I'll give you an example of one of those.
Welcome to the first week of HEAL 704, Quality Management in the Health Sector. You may have purchased a product or service and thought, oh, this is poor quality.
So
Kia ora, I'm Jalal Mohammed, and welcome to session 1, the basics of quality management. The aim of this session is for you to develop an understanding of what is meant by quality and examine attributes of quality in relation to the New Zealand health sector.
So those were two different ways that I do it. There's a number of ways to do it. So the first, I like to mix it up. So sometimes I use that video where they can see me. It creates that connection. They kind of don't think of an online learning environment as cold and detached. You know, they think of it as a person. They think that, Jalal's there, you know, I can engage with Jalal. So it kind of promotes that engagement. Sometimes I also use the voice over presentations as well. So those voiceover presentations, I use Prezi. Prezi, if you can get a discounted educational access, and it works out to, I think, about $3 a month. It's probably about 5 or 6 Fijian dollars a month. And that's what I'm using today to present my slides as well. Sometimes I use animations as well, and I use things like Doodly or Toonly, but there's also other things that you can use, like Microsoft PowerPoint, where you can do a voiceover to some very cool slides. There's a lot of templates available online as well that you could be using as well. So the next part after the banner and the introduction to the session is the learning goals. So here I just present a brief outline of what the expectation is for the students in respect to their learning. So what would this engaging with this week achieve? And then how does it link to the overall learning outcomes for the course? Here we have learning outcomes. We have, about 4 or 5 learning outcomes, broad learning outcomes for the course, and that's how they're assessed. I know in a lot of universities it's done differently. So I just link it back to those broad learning outcomes of the session, and the student goes, okay, if I engage in session 1, it contributes to my understanding of learning outcome 1 and 3. So it signposts for them, how does this session, contribute to their learning. But for me as a facilitator, then it also signposts for me that element of constructive alignment. So when I think about this session, I think about it in terms of those 2 learning outcomes. So all of the resources, all of the activities, all of the teamwork that I do focuses around those 2 learning outcomes. And then it also helps me to build those learning outcomes through those different activities. So we'll look at the next couple of elements of that template, and you'll have a fairer idea of what I mean in terms of scaffolding and constructive alignment. But those are just images. You can do those sorts of images in really any software. You could do it in PowerPoint, you could do it in Canva. I've done it in Prezi, but really there's a lot of options to create images. I had a conversation with a student last week, and he told me, I really liked, he did one of my courses last semester. He said, I really like the way that you presented it visually. He said, I like listening to the recordings as well, but, when I see it visually and it's presented in a much simpler, condensed format, I can easily grasp that information. Whereas, if it's all written out in documents and text, then I have to kind of figure that out. So, that was some of the feedback that I got around some of those visual elements. Generally, students enjoyed it. It's easy to look at, easy to get some of the information, and then move on to the next thing that they have to do. So the next thing that I have is a set of resources, and the resources is where the knowledge creation happens. So there would be key readings. I like to keep it very short and simple in readings. If you have a 20-page reader, a journal article, or textbook chapter, it's very likely that the students will not engage with all of that material. And sometimes it's quite off-putting as well to have such a big document where you are trying to make sense of all of that information that you've got there and relate it to the learning outcomes. So I try and keep it very short, so very relevant readings. I try and keep it to 1 or 2. One is better in my opinion. I try and keep it shorter, and I try and keep it as relevant as possible, so students don't get turned off by it. Then what I do is I have a recorded resource, and this recorded resource is a number of things. They could be voiceover presentations, or they could be animated videos, and I'll show you some of this. And then I have an optional supplementary resources section in that template as well. And this is primarily to put through some of those extra resources in case some students have not grasped the information or the learning from the reading and the recorded resource. They can visit additional resources, and these resources could be readings, it could be links to YouTube videos, or any other educational resource. All right. So as I was saying, there's 3 different types of resources. I try and keep it as when I'm creating these, I'll talk about the recorded resource in particular. When I create recorded resources, what I found out from experience and from literature is the shorter it should be short. It should cover a few key points. So you could create, 3 or 4 5-minute videos around certain concepts that you would like students to understand in that week. I try and keep it under 15 minutes and to a single video if I can. And I try and use different formats. So here's a animated video that I created.
A number of attributes characterize quality of healthcare services. These are access to services, technical competence, equity, effectiveness, efficiency, continuity of care, safety, patient-centeredness, and amenities.
So, you know, that was something that I did using a software called Doodly, but there are many other alternatives available to creating that. And, you know, there's, you know, if you're doing voiceover presentations, you could use PowerPoint, which works really well. But there's also other software like Mentimeter that you could do. H5P is also another good software. There's a free and a paid for version on that. And there you can also put in quizzes into those interactive slides, those presentations, so you can make them interactive. So you can have a break, you know, like, you know, present a key concept, have a little quiz around it, and then go on to the next key concept, which students also find quite useful as well in terms of their developing that understanding. And then I have an engagement session, and I do this so that I can have those conversations with students. Students have an opportunity to ask me questions, but also to learn from their colleagues as well. I had a student who gave me, and I talked to him about the engagement sessions. It was something that, you know, I thought would be a benefit, but I always try and get feedback from my users. And I wrote down what he said. He said, you know, it's easy to watch the recorded lectures, but it's not easy to understand them on your own. Having some way to reach out to the lecturer and having some way to reach out to my classmates is helpful. For example, reaching out to someone who has better understood the module than I have. So it gives students that opportunity to clarify some of those doubts. It gives me an opportunity to talk to the students to see if they've understood the key concepts, the readings, and, you know, what have they understood from it. If they haven't understood, then it's an opportunity for me to discuss this further with them, clarify any doubts that they have. So it's a process of getting together with the learner and helping to shape that knowledge creation. So it's that social element of learning that comes through in this session as well. I like to use Zoom, but you can really use anything. You could use Teams or any other software for that as well. And then I have, after, you know, they've read their resources, they've had an opportunity to engage, then I give them some formative self-review activities. So these are activities that they engage, you know, with their peers in. There are activities that they just do on their own and test their understanding of what they've read, what they've watched, and what they've discussed in our engagement sessions. So you can create a number of these, you know, from worksheets to crosswords, different online activities. You can gamify some of this learning as well. You can use quizzes, discussion boards, etc. So here's an example of an activity that I created. It's just a worksheet in the very first session, but I use a variety of activities throughout the course. And I've summed up some of these that you could also embed in your practice as well. So there's worksheets that you can create using different software. There's crosswords. You can even create worksheets on Word documents. You don't need a fancy software for creating worksheets. You can create crosswords. There's lots of free online software to do that. You can use your own learning management system, whether you're using Moodle or Canvas or Blackboard, to create those quizzes. Kahoot's particularly good if you want to gamify some of that learning. There's also Socrative and Formative for quizzes. And then also, you know, you could be using some concept mapping tools as well to create that engagement and discussion within those discussion boards. And, you know, I've listed some of those there. Mural's a particularly good one. It is a paid software, but if you write to them and say that you're with an educational organization, they will give you a free license. I've done that and I've gotten a free license. Board is also quite good as well, but there are many others that you could be looking at as well. And then what I try and do is pull all of those threads together through a team task. Remember, as I said, this template I took on board, that one of the key principles was that learning is a social activity. I like to use authentic assessments in my courses. So we have a clinic that we have as a university. And so my students go out in there, and for this course, Quality in the Health Sector, they design a patient engagement tool for that clinic. So, they get to put into, they get to apply some of the things that they've learned, some of the theory that they've learned into a particular context. So they get to contextualize that learning. And, they get to work with interdisciplinary teams, because it's a clinic made up of a lot of allied health professions. So you've got, oral health, physiotherapists, a lot of different other health cadres there as well. So they get to go and talk to these different services. They get to talk to different healthcare professions, and then come up with a tool that will work for the clinic as a whole. So it tries to build in that interdisciplinary nature of health and knowledge construction as well. So they do this, and then they also talk to some clients. They talk to the clinical manager who oversees the clinic, and gets their feedback throughout the process of developing that tool, and they refine it, and then they get to deploy it as well. So, but you can really have those team tasks as anything, and it's not essential to have those team tasks. This is an optional part of that template. You could replicate some of this within those discussion boards, and do some team activities there as well, to use to get learners to engage with each other and their peers. So there's a lot of different ways, again, to create that image that I did. You've got more simple tools as well, such as PowerPoint, Word, to do it as well. And then finally, I do a recap resource, and this is at the end. So once they've read the resources, so I don't post this until towards the end of the week. So they've had an opportunity to read their resources, engage with the recorded resource, have an engagement session, and have a discussion. And this is where I pulled together some of those different discussions that I've had in that engagement session, and try and make sense of it. So I weave together those discussions, and get students, or get the learners, to think about some of these concepts more broadly. And it's a process of me facilitating that knowledge creation. And again, this is
before you move on to the next session, let's
just through on the normal voiceover presentation, and it's just slides, pulling together some of those common threads of those discussions, readings, and recorded resources. And it's also an opportunity for me to reiterate something that I've come across, that perhaps, in my engagement with the students, they haven't picked up on a particular concept. This is the point for me to reiterate that and drive home some of those really important concepts. And you can create that using through a number of different software. And then I have a reviewing checklist. I really like to do this, as an actual checklist. The learning management system that we have doesn't accommodate this. I had to do this visually. But if you're using something like Moodle, we use Blackboard. We're transitioning on to Canvas early next year, and then Canvas will allow that checklist. And it's just, a box that they can kind of tick off, and to ensure that they've covered all of those important aspects, tasks, and activities that they needed to do in that week. And again, if you're doing an image, you can really do it with any software. I've listed a few there, but PowerPoint and Word will work equally as well. There's an example of a course. So I'll open this up and take this. Are you able to see my Blackboard course?
No.
No.
I'll come back to this after the presentation because I think I'm using a particular software that may not show you that. I will come back to that, but some further tips around engaging learners online is to ensure that the workload is realistic, have intrinsic motivation throughout the course, pace the learning, use that scaffolding of learning. Don't get them to do too much in a session. It is something that may turn them off, or it will deter from the engagement. So pace that learning throughout the course. You have, 12, 13 weeks or 12, 14 weeks in some cases to cover all of those elements. Ensure that you give feedback, that the feedback is given in a timely manner. Ensure that the feedback is constructive, and ensure that you pick on, there's evidence from literature that says that pick on 3 important elements that the student needs feedback on. Don't overwhelm them with 10 different points where they don't know how to action or correct any of that. So pick 3 important elements that you see that they need feedback on and just focus on that. Have good guidelines for your activities, for anything within that online learning environment, because some of that is a little bit more difficult than a classroom session. A classroom session, you talk to the students, you're able to explain things and they understand it. But in online, some of these things they're reading and they're making sense of it. So make sure that the instructions that you have around what they need to do, the activities that they need to undertake, what they need to complete is quite clear. Ensure that there's constructive alignment. Students will see the value of those elements. If there's constructive alignment, they'll know, okay, to do that activity, I need to engage with this video resource. I can't do that activity without engaging with that video resource. Students will always be students. There's a particular pattern to students. They are focused or driven by assessments and how to complete those assessments and move on to their next course. If they can go to the activity and do it without engaging with any of those resources, if it's something that's Googleable, then they will take the easy way out. So build in, those structures that that ensure that, to be able to do that activity, they need to engage with the reading, they need to engage with the recorded resource, and then they can come and do that activity. Create an online presence. If you're not there online, the students aren't going to be there, so they're not going to be engaged. So have some weekly announcements, and that's a motivating thing for the students. They get to see that you're posting online. You can either do this written, or you can do a video introduction of the week, what they need to cover. Use introductory videos, use a lot of formative activities so you can give feedback to the students, and it keeps them motivated, keeps them engaged. As I said earlier, give them timely feedback, but also ensure that there is good communication channels. So that means that the students are able to ask questions, have you respond in a timely manner, will promote that engagement in the course. Also think about making online accessible for all students, whether they have learning disabilities, whether they have different types of learning styles. So make it an inclusive learning space for them. So have a universal and consistent design across those weeks. Use pictures, diagrams, videos, word, text, all of these things to facilitate the different types of learners. Use alt text for images. So if you're using images, if you have a sight impaired student, they will use immersive readers to read that out to them. So ensure that you use alt text to include a description of that picture that you're using or that image that you're using. So they are also included. It is an inclusive environment. Consider videos. Videos offer flexibility to students. so they're able to watch them at their own time and pace. They can stop. One of my students said, I love those 15-minute videos, and they were short and simple. I got to watch them when I was free. I could put them on my phone and watch them when I'm in the bus, going home. But at the end of it, he said, I was able to stop those videos and make those key notes as I went along. So there's a lot of flexibility in using those videos. Consider access and needs of different users or learners, and consider multiple formats. So have some videos, have text, have diagrams and images, etc. And then I've just included a whole lot of other tools that you could use, and I've tried to come up with as many free tools that you could be using. So when you're doing those presentations, you can embed polls in those presentations. Zoom does it for you as well, so you could use that feature on Zoom. You could create virtual tours. I have a virtual tour of the clinic that the students can go through before they get to the clinic. So, it's just a whole lot of photos, and that SeekBeak program, you get to put them together and create a virtual tour of it. You could gamify learning, use whiteboards, include subtitles for learners with disability, include surveys throughout the course. I use a survey because we have a 12-week semester. In week 5, I use surveys to engage with my learners to see what their needs are and how I can modify some of the sessions to suit their needs. It's just a way for me to check in to see, if I'm meeting the learning needs of my learners. We do a survey right at the end of the course, but that isn't really useful for me to change anything for this current cohort. I can use that information to change it for future cohorts, but to make a difference for this cohort, I need some sort of internal surveys embedded into the course. I use Qualtrics, but you can use SurveyMonkey or any other software as well. And I've just included some links to images and music that are free and that are royalty free that you could also be using. I like the last one, which I've been playing around with at the moment, which is Filmstro. You can put in a phrase and it will pick out that from any particular movie. So you can then embed it into your slide. So if you wanted to say something to the students, but you can piece together some video clips from movies to say that, which is quite cool as well to embed into some of those videos. You could also use barcode generators to provide links to resources. So instead of having those traditional links that you see on the left-hand side of the page, you could have barcodes that take students to those readings, to those resources, etc. And if you were with the Fiji National University some years ago, I developed a teaching online using Moodle Manual. And I think if you contact Sania Chambers, who's with in the CNU, I think at the moment, with the Center for Learning and Teaching or whatever it's called, and Mary Deloy, they will have copies of that they can send you. That is a little bit old. I would revise that, but it has a formula or a template for learning or teaching online using Moodle as well. So that's the end of my presentation. I will switch my screen to show you that the course that I have. If you just 1 second, I may have to stop this. And then I can switch to the other screen. So you should be able to see my screen now. Yep.
Yes.
So this is the we use Blackboard. It's probably, in my opinion, it's not as good as a learning management system as Moodle or Canvases. We transition onto Canvas in next year, but this is what I mean, you know, when using Blackboard, it's a very visual approach. Those were the elements, so they just, there's minimal clicking, the students scroll down and then, you know, everything's embedded, so they just press play and that takes them through that video, scroll down, look at the learning goals. Our readings embedded through a system called Talus, which is, you know, for copyright purposes. So they click on that, it takes them to the readings, and then, you know, there's those recorded resources that I was talking to you about, some supplementary resources, that engagement session through Zoom, that activity, the team task, the recap, and the checklist. So it's just a scroll through system, and you have all, you know, each of the sessions or weeks on the left-hand side, and that's where the students click and get that information. So, all right, any questions, any comments? Oh. I see Swaran had a comment. This will be good for our undergrad students. You can actually use that for postgrad students as well, Swaran. We use that at postgraduate. The course that I picked out is actually an undergraduate course, but it works in all contexts, that template. It works in, you know, you could have it for short courses, you could have it for full semester courses, you could do it for short trainings, etc. So I can share this template as well, which I will do in our Facebook group page.
Dr. Mohammed, just one comment from me. Thanks for the interesting presentation. Actually, looking at your Blackboard, it looks so creative and engaging, and I believe that that is what our students need. And I so wish that this presentation could have been watched by the people that I worked with or have worked with before, because I really don't get this idea of some of the academics who are actually in IT and are academic. They tend to overload the students with a lot of things, like for example, for 1 week, the amount of readings, the amount of supplementary readings, the amount of videos they have to watch is way too much. And I have always believed that things should be kept short and to the point, which you have emphasized. So I really wish that this video reaches to those academics so that life of our students can be made easier. And thank you so much once again for enlightening us with so much on the aspects of online learning. And I hope that many of the academics can watch this video and think like us, I would say, because they do not. They tend to just overload students, and they put a lot of things on Moodle, which students are not able to cope up with. And sometimes they actually are not able to grasp the important concepts that we want them to, with the overloading of materials and so much content for each week or on the topics that their lecturers tend to teach for a particular duration. So thank you, Dr. Jalal, for your enlightening and informative presentation.
You're welcome, Pridika. I mean, I'll put the resource up on our Facebook group page, the recording of it, and the template. So feel free to share it with people. And I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone that's interested in that template. So
I'm sure Dr. Hazelman's team would be interested in the presentation as well. So I'm not sure if there's anyone present here from his team today. Normally there's definitely somebody from his team.
Next month, there will be Ralph from his team that is presenting. So, and he's going to present on Mahara. So, yep, So I can definitely pass on the link to them as well. Yeah. Or feel free if anyone has contacts with Dr. Hazelman and his team.
That was wonderful. It's, I think, quite a good recap of what we did last time, a good review as well. And you know, one thing that I have personally realized, because I have students who study diploma in IT network engineering students, we can never say that a particular tool will work for everybody. We need to keep dynamically changing as the demands change. So I've started to ask my students, you know, is this enough for today or is it too much? And they have to, you know, honestly tell me, and I actually have to do this because if I don't, they don't submit their assignments. So we come to this mutually agreed terms that this is the assessment. It has 6, 7 different parts. How about I will teach you? Well, actually, what I've started to do is I teach them according to what that assessment requires. And if that assessment has several parts and it requires me to teach or train them in all those different aspects, I wait. I tend to complete part A first and I teach them only enough for part A. And then I go back to teaching again. And then so even though they have an assessment there and it has a due date, but we have due dates for different parts of the assignment. That has seemed to work for me. Especially with the pandemic, it's quite depressing, you know. I've got students at the moment who have been, you know, they've been messaging me saying that the entire family is infected with the virus. So it makes the classmates very worried and disturbed. So we've started to do a lot of engaging things. We even have discussions. We have, you know, social evenings. We're trying our best to remain positive in this, you know, especially during the pandemic. And we've noticed that using different tools, it's always good to experiment with different tools. Then you see which one does it for who. So that's how we've been working so far. But thank you very much, Dr. Jalal. Is there any question from the audience?
Sorry, what you were saying about you know, different tools, I totally agree because there's no, and that's why I didn't really want to emphasize the tools, but it was rather than templates. I gave some examples of the tools, but I'm not advocating for any of those tools. There is user preference, there's learner preference, there's, you know, the academics preference, you know, and all of this doesn't, sometimes there's no intersection as well. It's like that whole debate around we had here around whether you use Teams or Zoom, you know, to do calls and video conferences, etc. So I think it's kind of that, you know, I have students, some of the students like to use a particular software, they like to use a particular tool. But so when I thought about that design of that template, it wasn't focused on any tool, but it was around what is pedagogically sound. So it's focused around the pedagogy and what will promote engagement. And then the tools come later. So you can use a whole lot of different tools to achieve that, but that grounding needs to be solid, that foundation needs to be strong.
Yes, Dr. Mohammed, I agree with you because through my experience, I have also seen that the tools that we use, they do not matter, but what you put and how you put to the students, especially the design. And I feel how you design your course plays an important role in actually having the students participate because they openly participate using different tools. Whatever you put it to them, they use the tools and they give you what we want. So I agree that design plays an important role when it comes to online learning and teaching. And also, like you said, the use of social platforms. And probably I just wanted to ask you, do you have any suggestions on how we can use the social media platforms, particularly if we look at Facebook or any other social media platforms that we have to facilitate learning? We are starting off with semester 2, so I'm looking forward to some ideas that can come across that I can use probably to make the delivery easier for the students.
Early on in my academic career, I used Facebook, but Facebook has a number of limitations when you're using
Right.
it. I created a page for my students. There's a lot of discussions going on there, and the students were really active because they were using Facebook and it was just natural to them. But
Yeah.
it made it a lot harder for me to manage. I didn't have any of those analytics that you have on learning management systems to say
Right.
which student is participating, which student isn't. The discussion threads became very complex, so you were replying and embedding replies within replies. Sometimes, it started off as a different topic within a different, that topic. So keeping track of that was hard. Whereas on a learning management system, you can have threads for those different discussions and you can follow that along. You can run your analytics and it will give you information. Student X posted, 10 times or has engaged with all of these resources, which I couldn't do on Facebook. So it made my work a lot harder in managing the students. And if I fell behind in what I was doing, keeping up with that discussion, then the students started to lose that interest as well because they thought I wasn't engaged. So I was mindful. I am still mindful of using social media. I do dabble sometimes. I think Twitter works well because, you can use it effectively. You can say to the student, in the limited characters that you've got on Twitter, post about one key, you can use it as a summary. Every week, post one key thing that you've learned, within 160 characters or whatever you've got on Twitter. And that makes it easier to manage. But now, a lot of these learning management systems are getting quite advanced. You've got a lot of plugin for Moodle. I think you use Moodle at FNU and you can talk to your ICT services. They don't like doing it. But if there's enough demand, they will look into it. There's a lot of, because it's open source Moodle, there's a lot of plugins that have been developed that replicate some of that social media elements within that learning management system. Have a word with your IT, but also Dr. Hazelman and his team, then you have an avenue to put forward that request. Yeah.
Just on that, so whilst we are talking about the learning management systems and basically having the interactive ways of actually delivering the content, the only thing that, well, basically I'm a student right now. I'm doing some courses from USP as well. And one of the things that I noticed is the legacy way of actually delivering lectures and the presentations, right? And I think one of the issues is also the age gap that we have, the generation gap, because not all lecturers would be aware of developing contents, So whilst we say that these are the contents that are there, and I personally feel like sometimes I just do YouTube videos to understand better the concepts of what is being delivered, So is there a way, or would there be a how would we engage the lecturers, the older generation, to actually come onto these newer trends to actually deliver these things?
It is quite hard, I have to say, getting everyone on board. There are people that are quite set in their ways. There's always, every university that I've been with, there's always debate around the efficacy of online learning. There is a group of people that say, no, it has to be traditional. We can't do it online. We have to have, face-to-face lectures. And so, it's largely, when I think about it, I think it's because they're afraid to go out of their comfort zone, but also they don't understand what online is. They think it's lesser. So there has to be a lot of training and information, and people getting on board with it. And it's going to be a slow process. It is a slow transition, but they need to be supported, because it is without that support to drive forward that change, you're not going to have people who are uncomfortable with newer technologies adapting them in their practice. So lots of training programs, key people who will lead and promote that change. Lots of consultation from the ground level, because if it's top driven, then there's an inherent problem right from the get-go. So driving that change from the ground level up and having conversations like, that's what I thought about when I thought about this network, is having those conversations. It's what's good practice, and it's academics and practitioners coming together and talking about what they're doing, and then mapping a way forward rather than it being driven from the senior levels of an organization. And that's what I think is the real driver of change.
Yeah, definitely. Because in fact, it's the session today was really informative. We are actually at FijiPods. One of the projects that I'm involved in is actually to get a learning management system for the corporation. So that way we actually have a few certifications that we need to roll out as well. Plus also some trainings, like Swaran has already conducted the project management training and other stuff. So what we're looking at is to actually develop content and have it there so that employees, because I mean, it's human nature. People tend to forget, you need to have a refresher over and over again, So rather than having pretty much trying to get everyone in place and getting it done, a self-paced approach is quite good. So of course, like I mentioned, the challenges are there. I mean, one is the content delivery side of it, and then the other part is to actually the content development. And I think the Pacific Islands starting to get that, but from where I stand is sometimes it is a bit of a pushback from our own people, in terms of content development. So maybe in future, or basically if somebody is looking at it, we could develop or deliver something that is in between, or a mix whereby we can get the lecturers, I mean, something to entice them to actually go on this path,
Yeah. Think about badging and micro credentialing as well, which is how things are, gearing up towards now as well, even within higher education, breaking it down into smaller components that then can be put together through these micro credentials or badges. Right, and I think that might work well in your context as well, where, you could have a number of badges that staff need to acquire for professional development in a year or something like that, or to be certified competent in a particular area. These are the badges that you need. So there's lots of potential around badging and micro credentialing.
Yeah,
you can also have incentive schemes. So if you collect 3 badges, then you get a movie pass or different types. So you can also use gamification has really started to become very popular among students and even adults. There's a program by Microsoft where they teach you how to use Minecraft to learn about chemistry, to learn about basic science. Yeah. So even the teachers need to educate themselves, in all these new trendy ways of learning. So no one way works for everybody. I just wanted to show if I could just share my screen for a little while. I wonder if you can see the whiteboard.
Yep.
You can?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay. Can you see the diagram?
Not at the moment.
No? Oh, okay. Just a moment. Oh, here it is.
Yep, okay. We can see the diagram. Yeah.
So yes. I used this last week. So I have 5 students in a particular class, and they're all are doing project management. And I was trying to tell them how if each one of them becomes a service provider for a larger project, and how each one of them has their own statement of works. And so I was just drawing these diagrams, and this one came up because this particular student of mine, Michael, he has funky hair. So I tried to create something like a troll. And I realized everybody was, I mean, somehow this really worked for them. And these are adults, you know, they have families, they have children. And sometimes their kids are also peeping into the classes. So we were just trying to make it a little more interesting. And somehow when I teach them about methodologies, and this is something very practical, and I'm trying to use a tool, which, I mean, I feel it's more effective when you're in a classroom and you have a whiteboard. So I've got a whiteboard right behind me, but this doesn't work as well as this does. So, and whenever I show them this screen, they know what I'm talking about.
And Warren, you can use whiteboards for collaborative work as well, like Mural. You can use it, you know, get all of the students on there and they can draw and, you know, make those mind maps and those connections. I'm not sure if Blackboard, I haven't played around with Blackboard's whiteboard too much. And I think, I'm not sure if it allows all of the learners to collaborate on that as well.
It doesn't, so does Zoom. But
I'm sorry, Zooms. I'm sorry, I'm saying Blackboard. Yes, Zooms. Yeah.
So does Zoom. But then again, it also depends on the type of versions that we invest in. So we just need to keep exploring the different types of tools, especially particularly for those of us in the field of STEM, any STEM related fields. Then we know that the traditional online methods may not necessarily work for us. So if we talk to a chemistry teacher, for example, if we talk to someone who's trying to teach hardware, they need a lot of simulation as well. And then you need devices that are able to handle the type of load that simulation softwares would require. So I think it's also, you know, if our own Pacific Islanders could start developing certain solutions, like Pritika has done wonderful work. And if we could have, I mean, maybe this is another very good reason why we should have such presentations. And we need to meet when we need to have multi-stakeholder engagement, so that we need to sort of drive efforts and collaborate efforts between academics and practitioners, so we can have our own resources that are Pacific centric. Because we know that in the Pacific, I mean, as you had mentioned earlier, it's not that we've got everything on Moodle and everything should work fine. We do need engagement. Even after having everything up on Moodle, we still need to appear from time to time and tell them, okay, we are around. This is a real class you have, you know?
Yes, the online learning environment is quite lonely and isolating if you don't have that engagement. And I think it detracts from learning if you don't have that engagement, because it does turn learners off. We're inherently social, so, you know, we do need to talk to people. So I think we should embed that in the courses, and especially in the Pacific context as well. You do need to have that social element.
Yeah.
True. Because we're not used to just sitting in front of screens and doing nothing. And then we also need to be mindful of the population density. What sort of program are we talking about? And it's not just high school or primary school or kindergarten. We're also talking about industry. How does the industry work? How do they learn? I remember taking a class for chefs. So these are people who are you know, professional chefs, and they couldn't even sit properly in a chair. They found it very difficult because they're so used to an environment where everyone is walking around and you know, and doing things. It was very difficult for them to adapt to a table and a chair and a computer in front of them. So going forward, learning STEM would become quite a challenge. We've also had some discussions around that in the past presentations. So those of you who have just joined us, all our resources are on our Facebook group. So you're most welcome to go through them, and do contact us if you have any questions, if you'd like us to repeat any of the sections. Let us know.
And we've got Ralph that's joined us in between the presentation. Welcome, Ralph. Where are you from, Ralph?
My apologies. I'm just trying to get the kids. Yeah. Oh,
no problem, Ralph.
Yeah,
That's
zooming in from Nandi.
Zooming in. Okay. And which organization are you with, Ralph?
Oh, Fiji National University.
All right. Yep.
Yeah.
And I agree with your point that you said there, that instructions are important. Yeah. Earlier on in my presentation, I alluded to that as well, that we must have clear guidelines and instructions for the learners. So it's a very important aspect of an online learning environment.
I totally agree. I was just alluding to one of your very first presentations, emphasizing online learning and the importance of pedagogy. I mean, that particular focus. What did you mention? Just to summarize it, I think it was the horse before the carriage, or it was along that analogy that you had mentioned. Yeah, so I think in any, hold on, just give me a second. This is quite awkward. Let me just give me a second.
No problem, Ralph. We've got a comment from Minal. Minal, you said your Moodle guides are still being followed by current staff of the College of Medicine, Nursing and Health Science. Oh, that's good to know. I would love an opportunity to update that because, I did that guide probably about 8 years ago now. So some of that is quite outdated. It's good that you're using it, but I'd love to have a chat with people who are using it and kind of talk to them about some of the newer things, or so that would be good as well. But it's a good starting point, that guide. But we certainly could we could revise that. Yeah, so I'm not sure how I go about revising that, or maybe this video, if you circulate a link to this video, that would add to that guide. So if you use that guide in collaboration with the presentation from today and that template that I've got, that may also work well. Yeah.
Minal, if you could just let us know who your department head is. Maybe we could just reach out to them and lend them a helping hand.
Is Osei still your head of school?
Yes, he's still the head of school.
Okay.
And the reason I'm saying that is because I'm also engaged quite pretty well with the School of Public Health as well. So Sanya had been keeping me informed with the Moodle developments and all that we need to update in our Moodle as well. So as you were presenting along, I could remember all that I had gone through Sanya in terms of Moodle development.
Yeah, oh, wonderful. Yeah, Sanya, I've had chats with Sanya. Sanya's quite onto things, in terms of developing online learning environments. So she's a good resource to have at the university. So if the others don't know about Sanya, her name's Sanya Chambers. Yeah. Yes. So she would be a good contact person at FNU.
Ralph, would you like to say something?
Hi. Sorry, I'm back. Yeah.
We can't hear any disturbances, so please go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So what I was referring to was putting the pedagogical horse in front of the technology cart. I guess I think before we started, I think most of the Moodle training was around trying to get.
Oh, I think he's dropped out.
Yeah.
Yeah. He might pop back in.
We have Sanjay. Sanjay's just joined us. Welcome, Sanjay. Where are you from?
Hello everyone. I must
Hello,
apologize
Sanjay.
first of all. Yeah, I must apologize first of all. I joined in by somewhere around 4:38 p.m. I'm actually a school teacher with the Ministry of Education.
Right.
Oh, welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I just came back from shopping and I was just flipping through Facebook and I browsed through and I saw that flyer there about Dr. Jalal's presentation today. So I just decided to join in. Being a teacher teaching in interior of Navosa in Vitilevu, it's quite a challenge to ensure that students don't miss out on their learning at the moment. In my school, we have got about 116 students, And just today, we were only able to have a Zoom class, year 12 English, with only 6 students. So we have a difficulty in terms of network in that particular school, in that area. So I just joined in because I actually wanted to learn whatever I could, whatever ideas I could collect as much as possible. I'd like to learn about e-learning, teaching and learning online, to assist my students in my school. And yeah, I don't know whether I'm in the right meeting or no, because I see that many of the folks are from university, FNU, and talking about Moodle and all that. That's just
we are all committed towards making education easier for all of us, regardless of which level. So you're most welcome. And since you're part of that, no, I don't think you're part of our Facebook group. I will add you. If you could just send me a message so I could add you to our group. And all our past presentations are there as well. There's lots of tools. May I just ask, what do you teach exactly, Sanjay?
I'm teaching geography and English.
Okay, geography and English. So we've discussed about many different tools that you can use in class, and we all are teachers or trainers. There are some ICT experts in the class as well, and even those of us who are from the field of ICT, we know that at some point in time in our careers, we have to do training and teaching as well. So it's been a challenge for all of us. So we're just trying to get together and see if we can make each other's work easier by talking about the tools we use, sharing the best practices. So we've got a lot of resources in our Facebook page. You're most welcome to go through them, and do let us know if you have any questions, or if there are other teachers in your school who would like to learn more from us. We are happy to facilitate another session.
Thank you so much. I've just put my number there on chat, so you can send a message to me on that number if you are okay with that.
Sure. Yep. The best part is this is free. This is for the Pacific Islanders. This is for Fijians. So we just a bunch of people who are trying to get together and make education a bit easier for the Pacific Islanders.
Yeah.
All right.
Sanjay, if you note down your email address, we can send you those links as well. Okay, yep, we've got it there.
Yeah.
And I have been in touch this week with the Ministry of Education in Fiji to see if we could run some sort of training for school teachers as well that are wanting to use online learning management systems or different tools in an online environment, or create those online learning environments for students. So I haven't heard back, but if they do get back to me, hopefully we can work with some schools or with the Ministry of Education to deliver some seminars. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That would be lovely.
But you pass on, I'll send you the details. I've got your email address, and then, feel free to share it with your colleagues as well, and they could join our monthly sessions where we talk about a whole range of different innovative practices or good practices in online learning. And yeah, and watch some of the videos that have already been, Swaran did a session earlier on, Predicate did a session. Our next session is with Ralph from Fiji National University. And if I just share my screen, I can share that what's coming up next. So if you see that, that is going to be our next presentation, and Ralph's going to take us through e-portfolios using Mahara. And he's going to talk about what's been done at the Fiji National University and how that could be applied to other Pacific contexts. So do join us for that as well, Sanjay.
Thank you very much. We'll do that.
Dr. Jalal, maybe another thing we could do is set up a poll and see if there's any particular type of tool that our participants or our group members would like to learn more about.
Yep, sounds good. Yep, so we'll do that on the Facebook page and kind of maybe have a poll around what other sessions they would like to see, and then I'll try and arrange that. In the October session, I've got someone coming in from Queensland University of Technology to talk about authentic assessments online.
I've received some queries on ethics around ICT, legislation and ethics around ICT and policy. So because I have delivered one such presentation for University of West Indies. So I have that with me as well. Maybe we can discuss that later.
Yeah.
We'll just put some poll questions out there, and then let's see what our audience is much interested in.
Yep.
But as we've mentioned earlier, if there's anything in particular you'd like assistance with, please do go through our videos. Then please do let us know. Reach out to us. Reach out to the group members, and we should be able to assist each other. The whole idea is to move forward with learning and teaching, and for us to know that we are here to support each other.
Thank you, Swaran. Yeah, that sounds like a plan. And I think next year, I've got a few sessions lined up for next year, but we're going to start talking about learning pedagogies in the Pacific context and how that could be translated into an online learning environment. So we'll start having those conversations as well. So hopefully this year we'll cover some of those general things around online learning and get more into the more focus into Pacific online learning. Yeah.
There's some research going on in terms of online learning and teaching. Pritika is heavily involved in that. And I think one of them should be ready now. The data should be ready. So maybe we can have a look at that as well. And we could share some research data with the participants as well, Pritika.
Yes, if you're talking about the critical success factors
Yes,
for all, yes. So I have data for 2 universities, basically USP and Fiji National University. So we can look at some of the data that we have collected from student perspective and how we can work towards improving online teaching and learning in the Pacific.
Wonderful.
Great. So it would be good to have a look at that, and then also see what sort of responses are we getting from which age group, students studying which particular discipline. And then it's good to have high school teachers as well, because they help
Exactly.
us understand a lot as well.
Yes, I was about to mention that to Sanjay, if we can have the high school teachers as well, so that they actually can understand what students feel and how they can enhance the learning at secondary education.
True. So please, Sanjay, do encourage your colleagues and others in the Fiji Teachers group. I haven't really been actively contributing. I've seen a few posts, but I thought actually I should have been sending these invites earlier on. I wasn't sure how the responses would be, but I just tried it out today, and I'm glad you made it. So we'll have another session next month. Dr. Jalal, if you could please enlighten us on the next one, please.
Yep. So it's by Ralph from Fiji National University, and he will be presenting on e-portfolios using Mahara. And I think I'll just pull up the date on that one. And that is on the 17th of August. So all of these details will be available on our Facebook group page. And I'll also add some of the people that joined and left their email addresses onto our mailing list as well.
So are there any questions from the participants, the audience?
I promise I will not disconnect again. Or I'll try and lock myself up somewhere far away from maybe the friend's place or something while I'm doing this.
Whereabouts in Nandi are you, Ralph?
Wangandra.
Oh, I'm in Namaka. So
It's not that far from you, Swaran.
no, not at all. Just walk outside the street and that's it. That's Wakandra.
Just a hop, skip, and a jump away.
Yes, but the network's been bad because I mean, practically everybody in the country who can still work are working online. So just goes to show that the ISPs are not very scalable, you know.
Right. Yeah. So my daughters has been having a class, and I think they have like once in a week class. So she had the internet connection, and I think just because of the 2 boys at home, she went to the neighbor's place to do her work. So hence my coming in late and trying to connect using my mobile phone. So I've been disconnected half the time. So you can hear people, my kids.
No worries at all. That's background music to practically all my classes in the evening, especially. So that's okay. I think we're evolving as teachers, as learners. So these things have started to become normal for us. We just need to learn how to navigate our way through these things. But if you've missed out on anything, everything is up on our Facebook group. So you're most welcome to have a look, share it with your colleagues, and do reach out to us if you have any questions. So if there aren't any questions, no comments, then let's just take a group picture. Rajnil, can you please take a picture for us? So if you don't mind just putting your camera on, so we could take a picture of the session today. Good to see you, Ralph.
And now I see Ralph. Now I know where I've seen him. He used to be at USP.
Oh, okay. So Ralph, you with FNU now, right?
Yes, we did the same. I think one of the same IAS courses with Rajnil.
Yeah, I think masters when we were doing my masters. Yeah. All right. So set. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, tell us when to smile.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, smile, please.
Looking at Rajnil's background,
Awesome.
People will question what was the session about. Anyway,
that's the best part about it.
True. We're trying to make our sessions as lively as possible. I've told my students as well, dress up as if it's an event. So I try to do the same, get up, dress up and show up.
Yeah.
So it was wonderful to meet you all again. For those of us who have met before or have had sessions together, thank you for joining us again. And to our new members, the new participants, you're most welcome to join us in all our sessions. And I hope you've had an enjoyable experience. I surely did. So every time we have these sessions, we learn something new. So you're most welcome to join us in the other sessions as well. And is there anybody who'd like to say anything?
Thank you everyone for joining us today. It was great to share my presentation with you, and it was great to get your feedback as well and your experiences, because every time I present, I use that information to refine some of the things that I'm doing, and my understanding, which is growing each time I present. So it's not, you never have perfect knowledge, but it's great to interact with you and to kind of learn and develop my knowledge as well. So thank you for joining me.
Rajnil, thank you for giving us a bit of perspective about industry, especially an organization like Fiji Ports, because the employees of Fiji Ports, they're from all different diverse backgrounds. There's some expatriates as well. So there are people working at ground level. So the executive team members as well. So trying to get everybody onto learning platforms is definitely a challenge, and that's something that I, as an industry consultant and trainer, also need to start thinking about. How are we going to address these challenges? So thank you for giving us that wonderful insight. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you next month for Ralph's presentation.
Yes, we're looking forward to it, Ralph.
Great, see you then.
Okay, so have a blessed evening and take care of yourselves and your families.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.